Hello and welcome, friends, to the fourth and final installment of the AccuMark 3D V12 What's New videos. So this video is a bit of a supplement to the videos that we released earlier in the beta cycle. At that point, we were still finishing up a few features and doing some bug fixes. So I want to take a little bit of time to go over features that have changed a bit since that original beta release. Now that we have officially wrapped development, we know exactly where the features are and what's in them. So I can speak directly and clearly about how the features are to be used, and we resolved some of the issues that came up in beta. So thank you to all of our AccuMark 3D beta testers. We love you and thank you very much. Okay, so I'm going to get started by going over Visu and Xtext files. So I'm going to open this folder here. When you're using the Xtext software, if you have their scanner and software, you can create a variety of optical maps that will give your fabrics in 3D a really great final appearance. So it'll make all the textures look realistic, and when you go into render mode, then those fabrics will really pop and give you a photorealistic type of result. So what that Xtext file, or what you get when you create textures with these types of optical scanners or using their software, are several different image maps. So here we have 6 different files for this one fabric. And these things relate to the transparency, the color, the roughness, and the texture of every fabric. So you have a different map to sort of tell the system how to interpret and to visualize for you each of these materials. Now, each one of these maps has its own place in the fabric table. So I'm just going to go here, File Editor, and launch my fabric table. All right, so each one of these maps, here we have image. If we scroll a bit down, you'll see bump and normal maps, and then all the way at the end you have the rest of the maps that you need to give really great textures in 3D. So what you can do is, for each map that you have, select the lookup here, and you can navigate to each file. What we've added since the beta release is, if you have an Xtext file, that because you're using the Xtext software, you can right click and import Xtext. And what that's going to do is just give you the opportunity to navigate to an Xtext file on your system, which will contain all of the image maps that you created using the Xtext software, and it will automatically place them in the right column in your fabric table. So sometimes you don't need all of the image maps, and whatever image maps you have will be correctly applied in the fabric table. So there I have my normal map and then my image map. And then you save your fabric table, and there are your textures. So you're ready to use those in AccuMark 3D. Once you have those textures applied, see, I have a simulation here, and I have 2 different fabrics, both with fabrics that were scanned with the Xtext scanner. When you zoom in here, you're seeing really great texture in the material. And this is just the standard simulation. So once I go into render mode, then we'll see these materials look even more realistic. So that brings me to my next topic of conversation, render mode. So in the beta release, render mode was a little higher up in your Gerber tab. We moved it closer to the export images panel because you can use these 2 tools together. So if you want to export beautifully rendered images of multiple views or create a turntable, you can do that. So once I go into render mode, I'm going to have a few more options that come down now. So I still have the options to select my lighting, but in earlier versions, your backdrop was just there and you couldn't get rid of it unless you deleted it from your scene. Well, now you don't have to delete it. We have a toggle for show backdrop. So if you want that backdrop there, you have it, and if you don't, you can make it go away. And when it goes away, it will also speed up the rendering time with the backdrop. That's another object there. So sometimes it will take a little bit longer to render when you have that backdrop there, if you make it go away, then your render will run a little bit faster. But you're going to get a slightly better lighting with that backdrop there because you have something for the light to reflect off of in your render mode environment. So as this continues to render, you see already my material is looking very, very realistic, and I'm really getting a great quality render on this simulation. So in the beta release, we had an option to write image, and that was how you saved out your rendered images. We're not writing images anymore in the release because, like I said, you can use the export image. And what that does is it gives you the option to select which angle you want. So you have a whole variety of angles here. You also can select the render size and the export image quality. So render size, think of this as how many little pixels are going to be in that image when you send this to export image. So if you just want a quick simulation and you're not going to have your simulation output displayed really huge on printed material, if it's just going to be on a computer screen, 1080 is fine. But if you do want a really high resolution image, then go ahead and take this value up. You can do up to about 4,000. But know that the larger your render size is, the longer it will take to render those images for you. You will get great quality images at the end, but it will take more time and more of your system's resources. Okay, so in addition to having the size, you can also decide on a quality. So in the What's New document, in the final What's New document, we have some samples there for you. I have them up on screen now too, of what the images look like at each quality. So draft, medium, and high, and about how long they'll take is also recorded in that What's New document. Now, what you're going to notice in draft, those rendered images will be a little more grainy, and the high quality ones will be less grainy. But either way, they'll look fine. So you can play around with those to see exactly how you want to configure yours or what settings you like to use. Me and I'm sure a lot of my other design school friends out there will be using up our computer's resources all the time because we always want really, really high quality, high resolution images. But you can create that, so that's up to you. For the purposes of this video, I'm going to put my setting on draft so that it runs a bit quicker. All right, so once I'm in render mode, if I'm in render mode, then these images will automatically export rendered. If I'm not in render mode, those images will be like my base simulation, which is okay too. It depends on whatever goal you're trying to meet at that point in time. So because I'm in render mode, my exported images will then be rendered. So I am going to just select 30 degrees and 150 degrees, and I'm also going to, no, I'm not going to select as is. I think 30 and 50 or 150 are good. As is will give you an example of whatever you have on your screen at the moment. So if you do a really exaggerated angle, then you can export the image of the garment in that angle too. So I'm just going to click export. Once this starts, it's going to start rendering the image. So because I have it in draft mode and because I left my size at 1080, I'm getting pretty big squares here, and you can see it's going through and bit by bit putting this image together. All right, so that took just a few minutes, and it gave me some rendered images of my simulation. It gave me the angles I asked for. So here is my 30 degrees, and here is my 150 degrees. Now I can tell which is which because it gives me the name of the angle right here in my details panel. So I'm going to just go ahead and make myself a configuration here. Write that one down. And you can see even at 1080 for a render size and draft for quality, I still got very decent images. And these are certainly good enough for me to save in my model. So when I'm going through AccuMark Explorer, this is the preview that I'll have of the garment. Once I have my composition decided, I'm going to go ahead and click Save. And just find a place to save it. I'm going to put them right here on my desktop. All right. So that is export image and exporting in render mode, and that did go pretty quickly. So this is a bit better. We have more options now than we did in the beta release. So in the beta version that we sent out and in that video. So one of the other things that we've made improvements to as well is turntable. So you can still export turntable, and you can export the rendered version as well. And this is really great because once you export that HTML turntable, you can save that and send it to people within your network who don't have AccuMark or don't have a 3D software. They can just open the turntable that you export in any web browser. So I usually show mine in Chrome. So here's an example of that same style in a different color that I exported and I rendered at a really high quality. Notice the simulation here in the HTML spins around a bit faster and is more responsive to my mouse than it was in the beta release. And like I said, this is really great because then you can share it with people who may or may not have AccuMark. Very, very accessible. And if you render the images really large, then your HTML will be larger. But if you render them on draft mode, then you'll have a reasonably sized HTML file that you can send pretty easily. If it's a large file, then you would just have to upload it to a Google Drive or Dropbox type of thing to share it. All right. So I'm excited to hear back from those of you who worked with export image a bit in the beta releases. It's a feature that we're really excited about. Also, those of you who have been working with render mode, so now give this new version of it a try. We did try to make it a bit easier to use and more intuitive and easy to get the best results of your simulations. So let us know what you think. All right, so another feature that I want to talk about is interactive pinning. Interactive pinning is just an improvement to the create pin function, but now you can place pins while your simulation is running. And this is a feature that works with the AccuMark simulation engines or the existing alternate draft and default physics modes. So I'm just going to go ahead and do my cloth simulation. All right, now with my simulation still running, I'm going to go ahead and start placing pins. So I did the simulation with the AccuMark engine. I have, again, my simulation still running, so I can see that here. And if I click Create Pin, I have the option to start placing pins. So I'm just going to place some here. Now remember, with the pin function, you're pinning cloth to the avatar or to the form. And as soon as I right click to get out of the create pin function, you'll see my pins pull right down to where, or my garment pull right down to where my pins are. So when you're doing an AccuMark simulation or a simulation with one of the other engines and you want to do something like move a spaghetti strap back up on the shoulder, you can use create pin while your simulation is running to achieve that. And then you can also delete the pins and you'll see the garment go back to what it was doing before. The pins may still minorly affect the simulation, but notice that it's pretty responsive. So if you have wanted to work with the AccuMark engine more and do more adjusting and things like that in v12, you can do that using the create pin function. All right, so that's it, guys. This was a quick one. I wanted to, again, just touch on the X-Text Interactive pinning, we just took a look at, also render mode and export image. So render mode and export image work quite well together now. Do know that every angle you select for export image when you're in render mode is going to take time to render each image. Also, when you do export turntable, if you do export turntable with a rendered image, then it's going to render each angle that needs to go in that turntable. So just give that some time, but I promise you won't be dissatisfied with your result. And if you have any comments or questions, let us know. We are all very, very excited to have V12 out there in the field, but we're not missing a beat here in product management. So we are already off and working on the next versions and writing specs and taking your feedback and trying to turn that into actionable solutions. So thank you all so much for beta testing if you are a beta tester. And if you weren't a beta tester for V12, you should definitely get in contact with us and maybe beta test another version, because we like to have your feedback put into the software. We really want to make sure we are creating solutions for our users, because we care very much about that. So thank you all so very much. Let us know what you think about V12, and we will see you next time.